So I have a few concerns about this particular Warframe. One of the reasons being, have you looked how this guy looks? He got all of the drip going on right now. So if you look at the face, like everything has just the perfect drip going on right now. Look at the original Caliban. Where is it? There he is. Look how great this man looks. And then he has this. Welcome to a Caliban theory craft. Good morning guys, my name is Birdman and welcome to another video that I have in store for you today. Today we're going to be talking about Caliban. And I do want to apologize. There is a reason why I was not... Sorry, I completely forgot that makes a loud noise. There's a reason why I haven't been uploading for a while, and this is why. So yeah, I do kindly apologize for me being completely inactive because, as you can see, I was on vacation. So, with that being said, let's just talk on and go on about Caliban, because this is the one Warframe I've been excited the most to talk about. And it also helps me open up a new discussion that a lot of people seem to talk about when it comes to Warframe builds and etc. Because a lot of people seem to misconceive that this Warframe is a bad Warframe. Now, the only thing bad about Caliban is his crafting requirements, because oh my goodness, DE.
Why does it have 9 anomaly shards to craft this Warframe? Why? Why 9 shards?
Along with that, the Narmer farm for Exoplasm, just to make this work. You gotta be kidding me! With that being said, that's basically the only thing going on for him that makes me get severely annoyed when I look at his farming requirements. Everything else is pretty good. I mean, if you look at his abilities, it's not bad at all. Let's talk about the one ability that probably is the most annoying to deal with. So the first ability is called Razor Gyre, which basically acts as a Revenant first ability, and what it does is it
Creates a spinning vortex of death.
at least that is what the devs want you to think. This thing is just hot garbage, as you can see. Even by accelerating it, making it go faster, it doesn't really affect the rate at which you apply damage. For example, if I slow down, as you can see, the rate of the damage doesn't increase, it just lets it spin faster. The only thing that makes this ability useful is the mobility tool. That's basically all it has going for it. Like if I wanted to get from here to there, it allows me to do that, and it's pretty good for mobility, as I said. And as you can see, it just doesn't really care about anything else. But yeah, as I said, so yeah, the only thing that really has it going for it is mobility, and you can use it to climb into Dargans, you can use it to take over pilots. It's useful in fairly low-level missions, it's pretty good, but it's not amazing enough for you to really consider using it. The other useful thing that it does have is that it heals you, but not significantly enough for you to really consider it. It's like 4%, let me just fact check. Oh, it's not 4%, it's 4 health. As in, for every second, it only heals you 4 health. I imagine even with a lot of strength, it's not going to be significant enough. Let me check it out. Let's be generous and give it the full Umbral set, right? And with that, we're gonna throw Sentient Fortitude. So that's the most possible strength I can toss on with my current mod sets. And it gives us 10 health per second. But yeah, as you can see, it's not a great first ability. It's not the most amazing thing. So for now, we'll go back to step 1 and just ignore Razor Gyre. We'll start with Sentient Wrath, because Sentient Wrath is interesting. It is very useful in the sense of, how they say, everything else. It's probably one of the most unique subsumable abilities in the game, because it makes enemies vulnerable to your damage. So, as I mentioned, there is 3 types of damage, or 3 types of restraints that enemies put against you. Firstly, they have insanely high armor. Armor is what you use to strip and has a yellow health bar above the enemy's head. That is basically the thing you seek to strip every single time you use corrosive. And it's basically the only other way besides debuffing them using Caliban's 4th ability, using Vauban's 4th ability, and etc. That's the job, that's what armor stripping does. There's also damage resistance, and enemies have generally a neutral resistance to all of your attacks, but obviously certain factions come with excessively higher damage resistance to weaponry, or at least very specific weapon abilities, weaponry, and even status effects. So, for example, Grineer are especially more resistant to magnetic, whereas the Corpus will be completely weak to magnetic. And those are basically how resistances work. Then there is also damage vulnerability, which is what Sentient Wrath is about. Sentient Wrath basically makes them weaker to damage. So basically your weaponry kind of gets a buff. So if you look at, let's say, my current build that I have going on here, on my Caliban build, I have Sentient Wrath that gives you about 70% damage vulnerability. 70 damage vulnerability basically means that they have about 30% resistance against your damage. Meaning that the 70% of the damage resistance that they had initially is now completely gone. Meaning that it's better than a weapon buff. So if I just use my second ability, right? They automatically just become a lot weaker to your damage. And just to compare to my normal damage, if I shoot this dude normally... Okay, to be fair, that was a slash rock, that's a bit unfair. It's a little bit unfair. But you see what I'm saying? Now I apply only corrosive. Now I use Sentient Wrath this time. About more or less the same damage, but look at the difference in the vulnerability. It's essentially 2 times damage, but with a minor improvement, meaning that now everybody is weaker to your damage. And it works in a massive AoE, and it lifts enemies into the air. That, my friends, is the power of Sentient Wrath. So for now, let's talk about Lethal Progeny. Lethal Progeny is it's good. It's not amazing, but it is good for what it does. As you can see, it allows you to summon up to 3 different Conculus to help you fight enemies. And these Conculus are surprisingly quite strong. If I send these guys out now to fight these Grineer, they're not exactly going to be the best at doing damage. As you can see, the damage is actually pretty pitiful against them. And that's not a bad thing per se. I mean, look at the level of these dudes. Level 60. Not exactly the strongest DPS units in the game, when it comes to summonables anyways. However, this is where they do become useful. Let's say I turn on their AI, turn on the enemy AI, and let them go nuts against me. Look how much shield I'm getting removed from me. Okay, I better probably toss out my 3. And my shields just start growing rapidly. Even when I'm getting shot, mind you. The only way they can get rid of my shield stripping is basically that, which is to get me to my shield gating. That's the only way they can do that. They can affect my shield gains. In order to counteract this, all you have to do is, when they start shooting you, go into operator mode. Yeah, that was a mistake. I was too soon. Third ability, third ability, third ability. Now I'm getting shot just before it goes too low. I'm gonna let Caliban do his job, and I'm back at overshields. But yeah, that's why his third ability is actually pretty strong, because overshields essentially become health. And if you don't understand what I'm trying to say, remember that overshields has weaknesses to magnetic and stuff like that? Yeah, well, overshields kind of counteracts that. And do mind you, while Warframes can strip your overshields, enemies cannot, unless, you know, there is very specific enemy types that can actually strip your overshield. So do pay attention when those do pop out. An example would be those spiders that do actually have overshields. So in other words, the only time you're going to be worried about your overshields going away is when you're fighting an enemy that has overshields. Oh right, also liches. Do be careful with your sisters. If the sisters start attacking you, remember, they can break your overshields almost immediately. So do pay attention when you're fighting them, that you do not run a shield DPS build there. Alright, now for the final part of his fourth ability, well, his fourth ability, let's talk about his fourth ability, Fusion Strike. Converts 3 streams of raw energy upon a single point, causing a massive reactive blast. The fallout from the blast will strip the armor and shields from all enemies that touch it. As you can see, the damage is actually pretty good. Now, it's not amazing against most... It's not really... how would I say? It's blast damage. Blast damage. Not exactly the best thing for killing enemies. I mean, look at the damage it's applying to this one dude. It's not exactly notable. But if you do note, their shields, their armor, is completely stripped. Mind you, his fourth ability kind of works... It's a confusing ability, so allow me to explain how his fourth ability specifically works. His fourth ability firstly strips armor, meaning that all armor, if you have a certain amount of power strength, it does strip their armor completely. In other words, corrosive damage bolts and stuff like that will not work on them anymore because they don't really have anything, they're just a bunch of flesh bags at this point. Along with that, they also have had their defenses stripped, meaning that it's not all of their defenses stripped because this is basically what I mean when I say damage resistance. So there is damage vulnerability, damage resistance, and damage and armor. So these guys are basically have damage resistance, this guy here has armor, and these guys here basically have both the defenses and armor stripped. Do you quite catch my point yet? Along with that, you also have a second ability that makes them damage vulnerable. So pair that together and tell me that is not just hilarious. Look at that. I am so bad at aiming. But I think you understand my point now. So yeah, his fourth ability not only provides damage resistance reduction, meaning they are weaker to the damage that you apply to them via weaponry and Warframe abilities. It also strips the armor, which once again also makes them weak, makes them stronger against Warframe's weaponry and certain attacks. So in other words, you've not only stripped their only sense of resistance, but you've also weakened their HP. Along with that, you can also do this. You can also use Viral Kitty. In other words, the guy that applies a bunch of viral to the enemies. So along with that, you also have your second ability, which makes them even weaker to damage. So Cat, if you don't mind, can you help me out here? Well, I didn't want you to do it here, but okay, there, thank you. Now what we do is use our second ability, yeet, and let the Viral Kitty do a job. Because now they have viral stacks on, as well as being damage vulnerable. In other words, just a light tap will kill them. Just a light tap. Full charge, 200,000 damage. And mind you, this is with the corrosive bolt. So in other words, this with viral and hunter adrenaline would be hunter munitions would be really strong together. So yeah, if that did not tell you anything, there's a few things I want you to come away from this video today when it comes to Caliban. Firstly, this Warframe is not necessarily a DPS Warframe, he's a debuffing Warframe. And when a lot of people looked at his fourth ability, a lot of people probably were like, hey, Burb, this is exactly the same as what Vauban does. Because if you look at it from this point of view, Vauban can essentially press his fourth ability, lift enemies up into the air, wait for their armor to get stripped completely, and then just sucks them up for more damage, then causes 3 out, everybody's dead. The power of Vauban, right? So, why exactly are you recommending Caliban above Vauban? First and foremost, this thing not only strips armor, it strips shields, strips damage resistance, and the second ability increases damage vulnerability. So unlike Vauban, who only strips armor, he also strips damage resistance, or in other words, defenses. Similar to how Nyx's second ability works. So in other words, if you want to make them even weaker to damage, his fourth ability is basically the way to go. And there's one other thing I forgot to mention. Alright, do you see these guys over here with their massive HP, armor, and shields? Well, the shields do seem diminutive, but if you look at it from this point of view, test out these 4. See how their armor is about to get stripped now in a second. Any second now. Any second now. Oh wait, really? It doesn't strip armor? Wow, that's weird. It's almost like Vauban cannot strip mini-bosses' armor. Along with that, his third ability can strip shields, apparently. I'm stupid. Jeez, I'm stupid. I actually thought that his third ability doesn't do that. I mean, it is a magnetic weapon, but I just thought it was a single instance of magnetic that you need to apply. Yeah, so do you see that shield's being stripped over there, and the fact that it comes back? Along with the fact that it doesn't strip armor? Yeah, well, let me put it this way. It strips armor, strips shields, and, well, the shields do eventually come back. You can just do it again. And also, his second ability. So, in other words, this works against bosses. Meaning that it's the only Warframe in the game where he can strip shields, strip armor, and strip the damage resistance on enemies that are bosses. That includes Sargus Wreck, that includes Prophet Taker, that includes the Eidolons. Can you see what I mean when I say this Warframe is powerful now? Oh man, this Warframe is just amazing. Along with that, there is one synergy that I am kind of holding back on to mention exactly why I think he's personally so strong. And show you something that you probably did not really... Well, there's a reason why I have this one ability instead of Razor Gyre. Fourth ability, second ability, fourth ability again, just to pull them together, mark for death, and kill. It's a little bit more complex compared to Zephyr's thing, but it does definitely do the job. And yes, if you are curious, this indeed works on Tomb Guardians. Fourth ability, second ability, let's toss out all three just in case, mark for death, and kill. Wow, that's interesting. No, oh! Well, game froze. It's killing them, I'll say that much. Okay, need to be a bit careful now. Mark for death. There we go. Game froze. Yeah. So, do you guys really think the Warframe is weak now? Do you guys still think so? I need help. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die soon. Mark for death. Kill them all. Kill them all. I tried, okay? I'm just not good at this whole Warframe thing, okay? Nothing I can do about it. Shee! Alright, I think you guys are starting to see the point of what I'm trying to say. This Warframe is good, but he definitely does need some changes if he wants to be self-sustainable. But imagine this paired up with a Mesa, or imagine this paired up with a Zephyr, or imagine this paired up with literally any other Warframe. Caliban is the perfect teammate to help anybody else with, except for himself. So where he is broken, he's only really broken when he has a teammate with him. So in other words, if you had Caliban out there helping out with this, doing armor stripping, setting out these three to aggro for the team, using Mark for Death to make one specific enemy weak, using a ultimate weapon that's really powerful, and just having him go nuts, I think that validates his use, and kind of makes him broken if you think about it. Look at the damage he's applying. I can't really read the damage numbers because this is before recording, before editing, so I look forward to highlighting some of the damage numbers. With that being said, my voice is dying, and that means it's the end of the video. With that being said, I will show you my build, and if I haven't shown you already, here it is. Now, do pay in mind that I am running this with Mark for Death, so that is why I'm putting some range on here. However, if you don't feel like running range, you can also run for a different build altogether. So this one I don't highly recommend, but it is very nice for one specific synergy I do tend to enjoy, and that is called the Caliban Protea synergy. So this is the point of the build. Essentially what you do is lock down areas, because Caliban can lock 3 areas down at a time. If you didn't realize earlier, when I don't know if I mentioned it, but yeah, his fourth ability leaves a zone of debuffing. So in other words, what I can do is I can summon these enemies here, and just press my zone here, and let them slowly walk towards me. Walk into the zone, my friends, and experience death unbeknownst. As you can see, it strips armor. Although it did kill me in the end, but So yeah, the way it works is you basically set up 4 different death traps. 1, 2, 3, and maybe a 4th one over there. Now they've had their armor stripped, we can maybe do a Shadow Wreath. Let Shadow Wreath do its job. Let's do it again, just to be 100% sure. Let's switch over to Protea, because this is the part where it gets interesting. And then all we basically do is first ability. And we just let it camp out these different zones. And the fun thing about Protea is that unlike other Warframes, there's basically no limit to how many she can let out at once. So she could fill the entire area with a bunch of these slash balls, which just do a bunch of damage regardless. Just look at this. The only thing that makes the difference here is that it's duration based. So if you increase the duration, the longer these balls will last out at any given time. Reasonably strong with Caliban, because Caliban just debuffs them. And by now the Shadow Wreath debuff has disappeared, but it is still pretty good. So yeah, this is a pretty good campy build that you can run with your friend if you really feel like doing it. Otherwise, well, you do have the Caliban Mark for Death build regardless. With that being said, I actually think that's the end of the video for now, because I really don't have much to share otherwise for this Warframe. If I do, I might make a follow-up video of this, because this guy is pretty good. I'm pretty much using him all the time to help out new players, as well as run some steel pods. So whenever someone needs me, I know for a fact that Caliban is going to be significantly more useful for the team if I run him, because he just he's just really strong. And considering the fact that he strips shield, strips armor, strips defense, works against bosses, leaves zones of debuffing, works really well with other Warframes in the sense of leaving zones so that you can tack on different abilities together inside of the debuff area. The fact that it has insanely massive range. All of this really tells me that this Warframe has massive potential in helping his team. All he needs is a little bit of patience and basically your own patience, so that you don't just go in there bursting in with all of the damage. You need to step back. And that's kind of what Caliban is all about. And that's kind of what makes him broken, in my opinion. Because he doesn't really need to do a lot of anything. He just needs his teammates to help him. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did, well, be like Caliban and just wait for the next video, because I'm sure I'll make more eventually. Because even with the massive delay, this was pretty fun to make. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye. Alright. I think we're done for today. That was a pretty good video, actually. I did appreciate it. So, I guess we can start with looking through the list. Excuse me, phone. Thank you. Got titanium stuff broken. That makes sense.
It's not broken. Oh, no!